So over the last 11 years, I've had so many great experiences. I can't believe it's been 11 years, especially when I'm 25. We've accomplished some great things. We've had our first citywide GEM conference this past spring, where we brought 125 women and girls together. I've watched young kids who came into the ARC as knuckleheads, always getting into trouble. I'm just being honest, and just grow up to be amazing young women and men. And I've seen young children, one of them who's in the room, who was so shy, would never even speak to people unless you had to pull it out of them, get up in front of a room like this and dance in front of all of you, right? And so those moments just give my life meaning. But in the midst of all those good moments, I've had times where things were very stressful. I mean, losing funding for the ARC from the state. We've had moments where we've mourned together because we've lost children in our programs to gun violence. And there's all the other things that you deal with just running a nonprofit. But what keeps me going are these kids. That's what keeps me, in this mission and in this work. And my office at the ARC happens to be located above the gymnasium. And so sometimes when I'm ready to pull my hair out, literally, I stop what I'm doing and I look outside the window and I look at the kids and they just play as if they don't have a care in the world, right? And I remember one day, I saw this one kid playing basketball in the gym. His name is Kamari. And Kamari, you can see him on the screen right there. Little guy, 10 years old, so cute. And I remember looking at him, and he did this cool move with his head when he had the basketball. Right before he would take a shot, he'd do like, I don't know what he do it every time, like this cool Modi thing, right? And then he'd shoot. And I'm like, ain't that the cutest thing you've ever seen? So I went down there, and I still think I can play basketball, even though the kids tell me otherwise. And I went down there, I was like, let me just go get his rebound and play with him or whatever. And, I would encourage him when he missed a shot. I'm like, try again. You're doing a good job. And so at that moment, you can kind of see me out there doing my thing. And after that, every time he would see me walk through the gym, he would wave me down. He'd be like, look at me. And I'm like, okay. And then, I would encourage him again. And so I noticed he would always have this big smile on his face. And he didn't say a lot. He didn't say a lot of words. So I was wondering, what was his story? The journalist in me was like always interested in finding out, people's stories. So I asked my staff, I'm like, tell me about Kamari. What is his story? And I wasn't prepared for the answer. So I found out that Kamari, when he was 2 years old, found out he had a speech impediment. So that's why he doesn't talk a lot, but he still smiles through that. When he was 5 years old, he was going with his grandmother and a cousin to Family Dollar, like they always do, to pick up some things. And when they came out of that Family Dollar, a young boy came and started spraying bullets. Kamari's grandmother got hit in the leg. Kamari's cousin got shot. And Kamari got shot in his side. The bullet went through his liver, came out his arm. They survived. Kamari was in the hospital for 3 weeks. Thankfully, he had his parents there who loved him. His dad, when he got home, nursed him every day, cleaned his wound, day after day. And then a couple weeks later, after he got out of the hospital, his father was shot and killed. So by the age of 5, he had not only became a victim of gun violence himself, but he lost his dad, who cared deeply about him. That story is tragic, but that story is reality for so many of our kids. represents most of the kids on the south side of Chicago when it comes to dealing with this gun violence issue. We took a survey at the ARC. We surveyed the kids in our 6 to 14 program. We asked 69 youth about how violence has affected them, and the results were disturbing. 55% of the youth at the ARC said that they had at least one family member who was a victim of violence. 64% of them said that they don't feel safe going to and from school. This last one really bothered me. 43% of our youth reported hearing gunshots regularly outside of their homes. Now, can you imagine that? Like, just think about that for a second. That on a regular basis, you wake up to the soundtrack of bullets outside your house. What would that do to you? How would that affect your psyche? I mean, I was talking to a woman, she's a doctor, Dr. Chandy, about this. She's a clinical psychologist. And I was asking her about what we can do to help our young people with this trauma issue. And she said something to me that was so profound. She said that a lot of times people try to treat this trauma as if they would treat someone who's dealing with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. But here's the problem. Post-traumatic stress makes the assumption that the traumatic event is over. Right. But here, they're in a chronic state of trauma, reliving trauma every day. Not to mention broken homes, failing schools, poverty, and a host of other issues. You see, that's why we need to step in the gap for our children. That's why we need people who say that our children's lives are worth fighting for, their dreams are worth living. Now, you notice I said our children, right? Because even though Kamari might not share your same complexion, he might not share your same zip code. But one thing he does share in common with every other child across this country is that he wants to grow up one day. And he wants to grow up one day to be great. Right. And he deserves it. Yes. Just like every other child, he deserves to grow up and live his dream. I remember the other day, I just walked through the ARC, and I just randomly went up to kids, and I just asked them, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up? Tell me about your dreams. It was so cool to see their faces light up. And some of them said, I want to be a singer. Dee Dee's child said, I want to be in the Marines because I want to serve my country. Some said, I want to be a police officer. And I went up to Kamari and I asked him, I'm like, sweetheart, what do you want to be when you grow up? And he just had this big smile and he said, I want to be a basketball player, a football player, I want to be a track star, and I want to be a boxer. And I said, you gonna be all that, huh? And he said, yeah, with a big smile on his face. And I said, you know what, sweetheart? You're gonna grow up one day, and you're gonna be great. And that's all kids really want. They want to know that someone believes in them, and they see the greatness in them. And that's why a place like the ARC is so important, because we help our children to understand that their dreams can actually be a reality, and they don't have to be limited by the environment that's around them. The funny thing is, when Kamari said that he wanted to be all those things, I noticed all of them were athletes. And I was sitting there thinking, I'm like, you know what? That's okay. It's our responsibility to let him know he can be more than just an athlete. Right. He could be a pilot. He could be a doctor. He could be an artist. There's so much more out there. But that's why we have to let him know. We have to stretch his vision, like we've done with so many other kids. I remember even with our GEMS girls, our gym's mentoring program, we took our girls to Lyric Opera House. First time there, it was my first time there, to be honest. Looking at those girls, one of the girls came up to me afterwards and said, you know what, I want to perform on that stage one day. I said, you know what, you will. But that's what it's about. It's about expanding their vision. And so, today, while we're here, I believe that we can change some things for our young people. So I want to ask you to do something. And I'm not asking you to do it for me. I'm asking you to do it for young people, just like that boy right there, Kamari. I'm asking you to raise your hand today. I'm asking you to raise your hand so that our young people can have the opportunity to dream. I'm asking you to raise your hand so that we can help to transform things for them. So instead of them feeling hopeless, they can understand that even in those darkest times of their life, there is still hope.
Raise your hand and help us to reawaken the dreams of our young people. Please visit www.thearcofsaintsabina.org and make a donation today.